Welcome to the deep dive. Let's set the scene. Imagine this. It's December 2006. There's a bus, right? Rumbling along, heading towards Boston. Inside, there's this 23-year-old MIT grad, Drew Houston. He reaches into his bag, and his heart just sinks.
Ah, that feeling.
Exactly. He's forgotten his USB drive. Now, that tiny, totally relatable, but oh, so annoying mistake.
Yeah.
That was the start. That little moment of frustration, it basically set everything in motion for Dropbox, a company that, as of June 2025, is worth a staggering $8.08 billion.
Wow. And the IPO was even higher initially.
It was huge, $9.2 billion back in 2018. Though, they definitely navigated some serious market challenges after that, which we'll get into. But yeah, still incredibly valuable today. Now, usually when we think about billion-dollar ideas, we picture, I don't know, high-tech labs, intense boardrooms, maybe tons of VC pitches.
Right. The usual Silicon Valley image.
But Dropbox, its origin is just so much more humble, more human. So today, our mission with this deep dive isn't just about looking at a successful company. It's really about peeling back the layers of the mind behind it. We're going to unpack Drew Houston's journey, his unique ways of thinking, his habits, which are often kind of counterintuitive, honestly, and that quiet, almost obsessive focus that turned a forgotten USB stick into this tech legacy spanning, over 15 years now?
Yeah, it's quite a run.
It's not just about the timeline of facts. It's about getting the why behind his decisions and the subtle how he built something that's lasted so long.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is exactly how unique that origin story is. I mean, how often do these massive successes really spring from just pure personal frustration?
It seems rare.
It is. Instead of, some grand market analysis or a slick investor deck, that direct line is pretty unusual. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, I mean, Dropbox's endurance, maintaining that $8.08 billion value by June 2025, even with giants like Google and Microsoft breathing down its neck.
Fierce competition.
Totally fierce. And constant tech shakeups. It really speaks volumes about something deeper, right? A foundational strength. It hints at this resilience, this different way of thinking that we absolutely need to explore today. So for you, our listener, we're going to try and answer some key questions. How does someone like Houston really think? What are the sort of bedrock principles guiding how they build things? And maybe most importantly, how do they keep that incredible focus in such a noisy, fast-paced world?
Okay, let's definitely unpack that. Because the Dropbox story, it really doesn't kick off with a big business plan or, brainstorming market gaps on a whiteboard. It starts with a philosophy, a really ingrained way of thinking that sees focus as like the ultimate currency and time. That's an investment, earning compound interest. Drew Houston, born 1983, Acton, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
He wasn't your typical rule-following kid.
No.
Not really. He was already coding by age 5, not because he had to, just pure fascination. By middle school, he'd built a working game engine. He was diving deep into the logic while other kids were just, playing the games.
Wow, okay. Ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and then at MIT, his laptop wasn't just for lecture notes. It was apparently brimming with side projects.
Sure.
Just him exploring, building things, solving problems he saw. It wasn't about the grades or checking boxes. It was this innate drive to create, to build solutions. And it's so important to get this. His true North Star, his main motivation, it wasn't just get rich. It wasn't chasing that external validation.
Right.
It was about leverage, not luxury. And that's a critical difference, I think. It really set his path apart from so many others in tech.
Leverage over luxury. Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't looking for the quick win, the flashy acquisition. He wanted to multiply his own efforts, build systems that made his time, his energy more potent, more impactful. And the catalyst, like we said, was that specific nagging frustration back at MIT.
The USB stick.
Well, yeah, but also just constantly wasting hours transferring files, juggling these clunky flash drives that you'd lose or corrupt.
Oh, I remember those days. Email limits, too.
Yeah, exactly. Email attachment limits were a nightmare for collaboration. Yeah. And truly seamless cloud storage. It just wasn't really there yet in a user-friendly way. So that moment, December 2006, on the bus to Boston, forgetting the USB. That annoyance didn't just, make him sigh and move on.
It stuck with him.
It became an obsession. Apparently, he pulled out his laptop right then and there and started writing the first bits of code for what would become Dropbox.
Wow, right on the bus.
Yeah. He wasn't thinking startup launch then. He was just trying to solve his own painful problem. And that really sums up the Houston mindset captured in his quote, "Build what you need, then scale it to the world."
That's powerful.
It really is. Such a contrast to the usual startup approach of hunting for market gaps first. He looked at his own gap, his own frustration.
That leverage over luxury idea is so key. It fundamentally shifts how you approach building a company, doesn't it? It's not about what you can get quickly, more money, more people, bigger offices.
Yeah.
It's about what you can multiply: your time, your effort, your overall impact. So many founders, maybe without realizing it, fall into that luxury trap. They chase status, headlines, maybe an inflated valuation.
Taking too much funding too early.
Exactly. And that can dilute the vision, force pivots away from the core idea, or just build something fragile. Houston consciously sidestepped that. He chose leverage. And connecting that back, he wasn't just solving his problem, was he? He accidentally hit on this universal pain point. Millions of people felt that same frustration.
Forgetting files, emails too big, stuff out of sync. Yeah, it was everywhere.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, how many great innovations are just sitting there, missed, because we tolerate those small daily frustrations instead of pausing, investigating them, thinking, could this be better?
It's usually the small things.
Often it is, not always the grand, complex challenges. Sometimes it's those persistent little annoyances. So when Dropbox got into Y Combinator in 2007, they took seed funding. $1.2 million.
Which sounds like a lot, but in VC terms, especially then.
It was modest. And not because they couldn't get more. Apparently, investors were lining up, ready to pour cash in.
So why hold back?
Houston was just incredibly intentional. He didn't want to dilute the vision, dilute his equity just for vanity metrics or a bigger number on paper. He wasn't building for the next quarter's report or a quick sale. He always said he was building for the next decade.
That long-term view.
Exactly. And that requires a different kind of financial thinking. You know, unlike so many founders chasing media hype.
He avoided it.
Actively avoided it. No splashy, over-the-top offices just for show in the early days. No aggressive hiring just to boast about numbers. Just this relentless, kind of quiet commitment to making Dropbox just work. Reliable, seamless, almost invisible. His approach to money was, well, surgical. Every dollar spent had a return focus, not just financial ROI, but the ability to concentrate, to do deep work.
That's an interesting way to put it. Buying focus.
He really believed good financial decisions weren't about spending less, but spending with extreme purpose. Buying clarity, buying time. And that restraint, that refusal to just splurge on trends, built deep resilience into the company. Think about it. Dropbox didn't need ad revenue, which often messes with user experience.
Or privacy.
Or privacy, exactly. They didn't gamble with user data like so many free platforms were tempted to. Instead, they built this massive user base purely on trust, and then converted free users to paid ones by offering real, tangible utility. More features that actually helped. And you see the results today, right? Q1 2025, $641 million in quarterly revenue. Healthy 7.3% year-over-year growth.
Impressive numbers.
And maybe the most impressive, a net profit margin of 18.4%. These aren't just vanity metrics. They show real sustainability, real financial discipline. It's a business built meticulously, not on viral spikes or growth hacks that fade.
So it's like his financial thinking is part of the same system as his product thinking.
Exactly. It's almost like coding logic. You don't optimize for flash, you optimize for flow. You don't chase short-term traction, you build for long-term trust. In a world obsessed with raising the next huge round, his core idea was almost disarmingly simple. You don't need more money, you need fewer distractions.
That cuts through a lot of the Silicon Valley noise, doesn't it?
It really does. Suggests that maybe too much money, without purpose, can actually create more problems than it solves.
Okay, so if that leverage and focus mindset was the foundation, how did it actually play out in the nuts and bolts? Building, funding, scaling Dropbox, because this is where it gets really interesting. The standard advice back then was blitz scaling, right? Go big, go fast, go loud, grab market share aggressively, even if it's messy.
Yeah, prioritize speed above all else, often.
But Dropbox deliberately did the opposite. They went narrow, focused, and patient. It was a conscious rejection of that whole hyper-growth for headlines thing that burned out so many other startups.
He had a phrase for it, didn't he?
Yeah. Hyper-focus beats hyperbole. Every single time. It was a bet on quality and endurance over just making a splash. And those early years really show that discipline. They stayed small, lean, spent money very carefully, almost surgically, only on what was proven to work.
While competitors were blowing cash on ads.
Exactly. Billboards, TV spots, influencer campaigns. Dropbox relied on something much simpler, much more organic referrals.
The classic refer a friend, get more storage model.
Yeah. And it wasn't just a cheap marketing trick. It worked because the product itself was genuinely valuable. People wanted to share it because it solved a real problem for them. Getting extra space was just a bonus, a reward for spreading something useful. Do you remember that demo video from 2008? It's kind of legendary now.
Vaguely, refresh my memory.
It was just 4 minutes long. Just Drew Houston himself on screen, no frills. He just walked through how Dropbox works, saved a file, showed it sync.
No fancy graphics or music.
None at all. Just pure product demonstration, his genuine explanation, showing its utility with like surgical precision.
Unpack.
Immediate. Huge. Within days, they had over 75,000 signups for the beta waitlist.
Wow. From just a simple demo video.
Yeah. It wasn't growth from spending millions on ads, it was growth fueled by resonance. It proved if you build something truly useful, people will find it and share it because it makes their lives better. And even as they scaled up massively, Houston was adamant about keeping costs under control. They famously didn't fall into the free forever trap.
Right, which often leads to unsustainable models needing ads or data selling.
Instead, they perfected freemium. Give enough value away for free, a few gigs of storage, the basic syncing to build trust and show how useful it is. Then, convert people to paid plans by offering genuinely valuable power features. More storage, sure, but also version history, better sharing controls, collaboration tools.
Things people would actually pay for.
Exactly, and it worked incredibly well. Fast forward to Q1 2025. Their paid conversion rate was 16.2%.
16%. That's huge compared to the usual.
3 to 5% industry average,
Yeah.
It's massive. It shows how much value people saw in the paid offering. Every improvement, every tweak, even adding AI features later, was meticulously designed to deepen the value for the user, not just to goose clicks or engagement metrics. It was about becoming indispensable.
Which sets the stage nicely for the next crucial chapter, the IPO and those tough years that followed. March 2018, the IPO, $21 a share, closes at $28.42 first day. That $9.2 billion valuation. A huge moment of triumph, obviously.
A big validation.
Absolutely. But the real test of Houston's whole philosophy, the real story, started after that initial excitement died down. Between 2018 and 2021, Dropbox really faced some serious headwinds. The market started asking tough questions.
About growth, competition.
Both competition from Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, huge ecosystems offering similar stuff, often for free. Growth was slowing. Investor pressure was mounting. Analysts started using that label, one feature company. Yeah. And by June 2020, the stock was back down near $21, basically wiping out all the post-IPO gains. It was a major stress test for the whole company, the whole philosophy. The applause stopped, and the hard work had to really begin. And Houston's response, it wasn't panic. It wasn't abandoning his principles for quick fixes. Instead, he doubled down.
Yeah.
Operational efficiency, long-term vision. He made some incredibly tough calls.
Like the layoffs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Early 2021, laying off 315 people, about 11% of the workforce. That wasn't a knee-jerk thing. It was presented as a calculated strategic pivot. Painful, yes, but necessary to get leaner, more agile. And at the same time, they made that huge declaration, virtual first.
Which was pretty bold back then.
Really bold for a company that size. Not just remote-friendly, but a fundamental restructure for distributed, asynchronous work. Less reliance on real-time meetings, more deep focus time.
What were the goals there?
Clear goals. Save costs, flatten bureaucracy, but most importantly, create the room financially and operationally to invest heavily in the core product and, critically, in AI, which was just starting to loom large. And you can clearly see the payoff by 2025. Dropbox didn't become a flash-in-the-pan unicorn that faded.
No, it endured.
It emerged as a profitable, publicly traded SaaS company. Solid $8.08 billion market cap, strong cash flow. That's proof of growth with intention. Methodical, disciplined, not just reckless scale. They didn't just survive that period. They rebuilt stronger, leaner, and with a clearer focus. And it all comes back to Houston's surprisingly simple investment strategy, which goes beyond just money. Buy time. By clarity, by focus.
Buying those intangibles.
Exactly. In his view, the best ROI isn't in market speculation or unfocused expansion. It's in deep work, scaled across the organization. It's about creating the conditions financially, culturally, for profound, uninterrupted thinking and building. That disciplined money management combined with this philosophy on concentration. It's all one integrated system.
It makes sense. Every decision, funding, hiring, filtered through that lens. Does this preserve focus? Does it enable deep work?
Precisely. It's holistic, not just a bunch of separate tactics.
Okay, so he's deliberate about capital, but this strategic thinking goes even deeper, right, into how he structures his own time and the work environment for everyone at Dropbox, which leads to what I think of as his anti-hustle philosophy.
Anti-hustle. Interesting.
Yeah, he doesn't buy into just working more hours. He believes in protecting the valuable hours. It's such a contrast to that hustle culture you see everywhere, especially in tech. The back-to-back meetings, the 24/7 inbox, glorifying burnout, performative busyness.
Right, the badge of honor for being exhausted.
Houston went the other way. He actively engineered silence and engineered space for himself and for the company. The prime example, which is now kind of legendary, is No Meeting Wednesdays.
Ah, yes, heard about that. Introduced way back.
Way back in 2012, it was radical then. A whole day, every single week, meetings banned across the company. No check-ins, no syncs, just deep work.
What was the core reasoning?
His rationale was simple and clear. Distraction is the single greatest tax on modern thinking. He knew that building something great required dedicated time for deep thought, free from noise.
Must have been some pushback initially.
Oh, for sure. Teams used to constant meetings probably struggled, but Houston championed it, led by example, kept reinforcing why it mattered. And it wasn't just a company policy, it reflected his personal habits too. He's famously disciplined about not multitasking.
Really? Avoids it completely.
Yeah, he said, multitasking is just task switching in disguise. It's a tax on your momentum. Think about it every time you switch from email to code to a notification. Your brain has to reload context. You lose efficiency.
The cognitive cost.
Exactly. So instead, he designs his days around these windows of flow, 2, maybe 3-hour blocks, notifications off, browser tabs closed, just deep, uninterrupted work.
Sacred space.
He treats it like sacred space. Apparently, even major investors couldn't interrupt those blocks. He controlled his environment to protect his attention.
It really makes you question how typical corporate structures often undermine the deep work they say they want, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Houston's No Meeting Wednesdays was radical, but those internal audits later showed it worked. It challenged that assumption that more communication always equals more productivity. Often, it's the opposite. Lack of uninterrupted time is the bottleneck. And one of his more unusual habits, speaking of focus, is playing the saxophone.
The saxophone.
Really?
For relaxation.
Not exactly just relaxation. He sees it as a training ground for attention, mastering breath control, rhythm, improvisation. He believes it actually rewired his brain for better decision-making.
Like active meditation through music.
Kind of, an exercise in sustained concentration, listening, reacting within a complex system. Skills you definitely need leading a tech company, right? Listening, improvising, staying calm amidst chaos. And while the tech world got faster, louder, more reactive, Houston deliberately built a culture at Dropbox that moved slower, deeper, more intentional.
Discipline, not laziness.
Exactly, a strategic choice. Prioritize quality, long-term viability over buzz. Dropbox engineers are apparently trained to think in months, not days. Projects scoped for scalability, resilience. Success isn't just shipping fast, it's building well, building to last. And the proof, that 2024 internal productivity audit you mentioned, teams honoring No Meeting Wednesdays outperformed others by nearly 1.7x on project completion rates.
1.7x, it's significant.
Huge. And the reason cited, simply less noise. That right there is Drew Houston's superpower. He doesn't chase every fire, react to every trend. He builds fireproof systems. In a tech world addicted to speed, notifications, dopamine hits, his greatest act of rebellion was choosing depth, choosing focus. And then he taught over 2,500 employees to do the same. Because for him, the edge isn't hustle. It's not being loudest. It's uninterrupted attention. The ability to think deeply, solve problems profoundly, build robustly.
Right. So he built this internal culture of focus. But how did that philosophy show up in his bigger picture view? Business, life, especially when facing massive external pressure, like from, say, Apple. It seems clear he never aimed to be a startup celebrity chasing the spotlight or the next big thing. He was always fundamentally chasing clarity. When you hear him talk about the inspiration for Dropbox, it's never market trends or investor hype. It's always frustration, inefficiency, solving that personal problem that just wouldn't let go. Which brings us back to that core idea. Build something that fixes your own pain. Because if it's a real nagging pain for you forgetting files, clunky collaboration, chances are it's real for millions of others too.
Yeah.
He didn't try to predict a future. He built for his present reality.
Solving the problem right in front of him.
Exactly. And that's why the first version of Dropbox was imploded. Just 4 core features. And above all, it simply just worked. That wasn't just a slogan. It was a standard, a commitment. Technology should disappear, serve you seamlessly, not dazzle you with complexity. Users want their problem solved, not be impressed by bells and whistles.
And that quiet confidence got put to the ultimate test in 2011. Steve Jobs. calls Dropbox a feature, not a product, offers to buy the company.
Wow, that must have been intense. From Jobs himself.
Imagine, for most young founders, that would be either crushing or an offer you couldn't refuse. But for Houston, it wasn't the end. It was, weirdly, a chance for deeper conviction. It forced him to really crystallize why Dropbox was more than just a feature, turning down Apple. That decision is huge. It wasn't ego, it wasn't posturing, it was about staying aligned with his core values. Build something lasting, useful, that didn't need to scream to be noticed.
Selling would have meant giving up on the original problem.
Exactly. Giving up on solving it his way. It was a powerful act of defiance against this sell big, sell fast mentality, and it forced Dropbox down a path of independence, resilience, build slower, smarter, with unwavering vision. The pressure must have been immense, but he stuck to his guns, and that quiet confidence really permeated Dropbox for years. While others chased headlines, they chased reliability. While others inflated headcount, they hired selectively engineers who could think deeply, not just ship fast.
Building a company that scaled its philosophy, not just its size.
Precisely. And even his personal life reflects this. He mentioned writing these long, brutally honest letters to himself.
Letters to himself.
Yeah, not journals for publication, just private audits of what he truly wanted, feared, was avoiding. His way of checking his intention, not just managing his time. Deep self-accountability. For him, the real competition wasn't even Google or Microsoft. It was distraction. The temptation to build shiny things that didn't matter. Internal noise, external fads pulling focus.
Fighting the urge to chase trends.
Exactly. Even after hitting $1 billion in revenue, his instinct wasn't massive expansion, it was simplification. Constantly asking, what have we built that people would actually miss if it disappeared tomorrow? That question drove everything, kept them focused on core value. He doesn't believe in disruption just for kicks. He believes in service, usefulness, building software that doesn't demand attention, but earns it.
That feels rare in Silicon Valley.
Incredibly rare. He never needed to be loud to be influential. Think about influence. 2020, Facebook invites him to join their board. He's a multi-billion-dollar founder, proven leader.
Big opportunity, big network.
And he declined. Not arrogance, again, focus. He didn't want another seat at a different table, no matter how prestigious. He wanted to double down on the table he was building, because his view of power isn't access, it's alignment. Aligning resources, attention with purpose. He rarely makes sensational headlines, but when he talks, other founders listen. His talks aren't hype, they're frameworks. They spark clarity. And this carried through even to the AI wave. 2023, AI explodes everywhere. Dropbox didn't panic or just jump on the bandwagon. They pivoted, yes, but with purpose.
How so?
Houston guided them to become an AI-first company. Not to chase a trend, but to stay relevant. Essential. They launched Dropbox Dash, Universal Search, Dropbox AI for summaries, internal tools, but not just flashy tech. Designed to reduce friction, save time, cut digital clutter, things he always fought against. By mid-2024, AI features were driving over 12% of revenue and growing. It showed real cultural reinvention.
Guided by a principle.
Yeah, the internal principle was, every AI feature must save time, not cost attention. Inside Dropbox, teams started operating more like research labs. Ideas measured by how deeply they solve problems, not just shipped speed. That meticulous mindset, precision over scale, comes from the top. For Houston, power isn't scale, it's precision. Influence isn't followers, it's how deeply your ideas shape those who do. He's still one of tech's quietest architects, but his impact is huge. How we work, think about digital space, how products earn trust through utility, not hype.
So every journey hits that crucible moment, right? The real test. For Dropbox, it wasn't the forgotten USB stick. It was after the IPO party. March 2018, the IPO is a triumph. $9.2 billion valuation day one. But then reality bites. Like you said, by June 2020, the stock's back near 21 walls. Skeptics are loud. One feature company, killer competition from Google, Microsoft. Growth slowing, innovation looks flat, markets losing faith. But here's where Houston's leadership really shows. He didn't deny it, didn't make excuses, faced it head on. Early 2021, that really painful decision, lay off 315 people, 11% of the workforce. Not panic, but a strategic pivot. Streamline, cut bloat, refocus resources. And alongside that, declaring virtual first. Fully restructuring for distributed asynchronous work. A massive operational and cultural shift.
His leadership then was, well, exemplary. No hiding behind PR. He wrote that personal letter to employees, acknowledged the pain, the fatigue, his responsibility, but also laid out a clear vision, not just cuss, but rebuild for resilience, emerge stronger, more focused. That was the breaking point.
Which became the breakthrough.
Exactly. It forced this intense internal reevaluation. In that tough year, they radically transformed internally, restructured product teams, cut scope, refocused engineering on core utility, and crucially, laid the groundwork for that deep AI integration well before it was the main trend. The whole culture shifted from growth at any cost to clarity at all costs. Every decision viewed through simplicity, utility, focused impact, and the payoff. Clear by 2023. Dropbox Dash, AI tools redefining user interaction, genuinely saving time. By mid-2024, AI driving over 12% of revenue. Stocks stabilized, margins improved, but more importantly, they regained direction, confidence. Houston said, "You don't learn much from applause. You learn everything when it goes quiet." That quiet period, 2018, 2021, the skepticism, the hard internal work, that was the loudest lesson of his career.
Force of choice.
A profound choice. Focus over features, precision over popularity, long-term vision over short-term valuation. The breaking point didn't break them. It rebuilt them. Stronger, leaner, more resilient.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what can we, as listeners, trying to stay informed, trying to apply these ideas, really take away from the guy who built an $8 billion company because he forgot his USB stick?
Yeah.
Let's bring it home for you. Lesson 1, frustration. Don't avoid it. Investigate it. Dropbox wasn't born from abstract genius. It came from personal annoyance, that small common friction point that was so real it demanded a fix.
Insight lives in those little things we tolerate.
Exactly, those itches that persist until someone scratches them. What are you tolerating daily in your workflow, your projects? Second, focus isn't a luxury, it's a strategy. Houston succeeded not just by working harder, but by working cleaner, smarter, more deliberately.
Fewer meetings, fewer distractions.
Right. More flow, deeper thinking per hour, not just more hours. For you, it means actively finding and cutting your own distraction taxes, notifications, constant email checks, pointless meetings. Third, real leadership often shows up in the quiet moments, especially crisis. During Dropbox's tough years, Houston didn't chase headlines. He looked inward, made hard calls like downsizing to enable survival and smarter scaling.
Listened, restructured, made the painful choices.
Yeah, the choices that prioritize long-term health over short-term comfort. A lesson for anyone leading anything big or small. Real strength is often in those quiet, tough decisions. And finally, longevity isn't built on hype. It's built on usefulness, discipline, clarity. Houston didn't win by being loudest or flashiest. He won because his product solved a real pervasive need and kept solving it, delivering value for over 15 years.
Enduring success comes from utility, trust, consistency.
Exactly. Beyond products, too. A successful career, any endeavor. It's not about chasing fads. It's building real skills, earning trust, and delivering on what matters.
And what's really cool is how these all connect, right? Facing frustration gives you the clarity for focus. Focus builds the resilience for quiet leadership, which ensures lasting usefulness. That $8.08 billion market cap for Dropbox, that's the surface. Underneath is a decade and a half of precision, restraint, and a founder who never tried to be viral, only valuable.
Just valuable.
If you take just one thing from Drew Houston, maybe it's this. You don't need the perfect idea. You just need one real problem and the unwavering focus to solve it better than anyone else.
So having explored all this, what does it mean for you? Maybe you're not aiming for the next Dropbox. Maybe you don't have a big idea yet. But ask yourself, what's that one thing in your life right now that feels consistently broken? That frustration that keeps popping up? The small problem nobody fixes, but it really grates on you. Start there. That's exactly what Drew Houston did. No grand plan, no funding pitch, no desire for fame. Just a moment of frustration, a missing USB, and that simple thought, there has to be a better way.
That conviction.
Yeah, you don't need the perfect plan to start. You just need to stop ignoring that persistent itch. Because maybe that's not a distraction. Maybe that's your direction. So here's a challenge. Take the next hour, close the tabs, shut out the noise, sit with that problem you've been putting up with, and just ask, what is solving this quietly, obsessively, patiently? What if that is your Dropbox moment? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mind of Drew Houston. We're committed to exploring these stories of depth, not just hype. Until then, stay focused.